Hello and welcome to this next video in our series Self-Mastery with Liz Nagle. And this is Liz Nagle again. And this this week we want to talk about love, because basically, in my opinion anyway, self-love and love is the answer to self-mastery. So we're going to talk on, I don't know, there's nothing planned here apart from the word love. So we're going to see what comes up. Apart from the fact that, yeah, I just wanted to start then. Let's have a look at the word love and the word, or the energy of love, I should say, the energy of love. And so the first question, I think, must be, how has the word love, or the energy of love, evolved for you as you have evolved? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. That's such a huge question, and
I like it. It's quite juicy, isn't it?
It's great. It's great. God, we could talk for years on that one.
Can we keep it to an hour?
Try. We have to. Okay, so yeah, when I was younger, like most people, love was all, hearts and roses and Valentine's Day and crushes and fancying somebody. It was all romance and hormones, I guess. And dreams about, living happily ever after and all of that, and somebody being your soulmate and fulfilling you, and protecting you and loving you. Okay, I should be talking about me. Yeah. It's all about how that other person will make me feel. I think that's how it was. How they make me feel. Do they make me feel special? Do they make me feel loved and protected and, taken care of? And pretty much, that's the storybook idea of love that we're all brought up with. And that's what I thought it was. And then, of course, there's love of parents and siblings and friends and all of that. But somehow that was a separate category.
Yeah.
And of course, if you were, as I was brought up Catholic, there was, love of God and being loved by God and, being a child of God and all of that. But that didn't often wash with me. I was a very skeptical member of the church. So I was very cynical of that love, of that sort of unconditional love. Yeah, I was. That's just kind of
interesting.
Interesting, yeah. I was very cynical of unconditional love.
So when did that change?
When did that change? Yeah, I guess having my son, having my child, that the priority that he became, and I would nothing would stop me from protecting him. I did
Mother's
everything.
love. Yeah,
Mother's
it's a different level.
Yeah. Totally. But still, I guess I just didn't articulate the fact that it was unconditional love, but that's what it was. That's what it is. It never changes. You know, and having pets, I think pets are a great way to learn unconditional love, because they love unconditionally. Well, dogs anyway. People doubt about cats, but but that's how it's cats really that have taught me how to love unconditionally, or what it is in practice. You know, when I moved here, I had 2 cats that moved in with me, but there was all these street cats on the street, and they're kind of calling to the door, looking at me, saying, "Well, you feed them. Why don't you feed me? What's the difference?" You know, it's like, yeah, you're right. You know, you're hungry, I'll feed you. It's like, you're mine, you're not mine. What? Like, the cat's sitting there looking at you like, what difference does that make? I'm hungry, feed me. And you know, and initially I had favorites of the street cats, and I would feed them, and I'd chase the ugly ones off. Not the ugly ones, but the ones I didn't like, the bullies. I try and chase them off. But I noticed that when I actually just stopped resisting and just fed them all equally, treated them all equally, I felt better. I was happier. The cats were calmer outside. There was no fighting. You know, I was just feeding them all. They were all happy, and I was happy. You know, simple.
There's a little message there, I think, about treating bullies.
Totally.
You talked about the cat about being a bully, and it's like, well, love the bully. And I think I've talked before about when I was a school teacher, I always used to say to the children, if you get bullied in the playground, as long as it's not like physical, obviously you've got to report that, but if it was like verbal or something, I would say to them, you know, just understand that that cat or that person in the playground is lacking love.
Yeah.
Lacking love, self-love, and of course if you lack self-love, that's going to be reflected back to you. So lacking love in their life in general. And so exactly, so you give the cats love, and so I have to ask, did they stop being bully cats?
Yeah, more or less. Well,
yeah,
it stopped being a problem. They were still the toms, you know, the toms were still the big guys, but yeah, once I gave them a plate, they were happy. I mean, they might gobble up their plate and then go off and try and gobble up somebody else's plate, but the fighting stopped because there was food for everybody, you know. And yeah, there were no favorites. They were all cared for, and they're all fed. So it was really interesting for me. It was really an eye-opener. And yeah, that was really important. And just, yeah, and then of course, you know, going back to when Bren died, and I realized that, you know, what's important in life, really what's important. The only thing that's important is love. Love is all there is, and our connection to other people. You know, because obviously, you know, Bren had a lot of really, really close, good friends who he absolutely loved and who absolutely loved him. And seeing their devastation, really, you know, when he died, and my own, and how his death affected so many people, you know, purely from that heart connection. It wasn't to do with business or money or anything else other than connection. That's what we all felt the loss of initially. I mean, you know, I think that's you miss the physical presence of the person, and the chats and the laughs and the thing, but it's that connection. That's our legacy. That's what we leave behind us, is the love. Not that we go anywhere, not that we're leaving anything really behind. The love never ceases to be. That connection never ceases to be. It's always there, and it's all that's important. It's all that matters.
Yeah.
And what about you?
I'm just enjoying sitting here in the energy of what you've just said, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because one of the many reasons that I love you is that, I can feel the love that you are, I want to say. Okay, so yeah, I guess, for me as well, you were talking about, when we were younger, it was all about the romance and like maybe infatuation and obsession and stuff. And I think for me, it wasn't just people. I would use the word love a lot for music. I love this song, or I love dancing, or, I love this place, and for a lot of things. But, we used love, I think, just to mean I really, really like. I think that was, growing up. If you really, 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 really liked something, then you would use the word love. And so, how love evolved, the energy of love, or the perception, maybe that's a better word, the perception of love, the experience of love. Oh, I don't know, there are many words that we can use. I think, obviously, if I haven't got it ready, available at the moment to share, but the map of consciousness, which anybody on my channel will be familiar with. I think as you move up that, you expand into higher levels of consciousness, and you move up that scale, that chart, the Dr. David Hawkins map of consciousness chart. Your view of life changes. We know that your whole view of life changes. And one of the columns actually says your view of life and your view of God. But we should perhaps have a column that is your view of love. Because as you expand into higher levels of consciousness, I think your view or your experience or your perception of love does change. So, because I think in the...
Or does love change your perception?
Yes.
As you
Well,
move
of course,
up into that vibration, it changes your perception.
Of course, because also we've talked before about, or I have, about if expanding, or expanding into more of who you are, going up that chart is love. How do you help others? If you want to help others expand into more of who they are, going up, then you can only help them through love. Love is the only way you can do it, right? I've talked about that, I think, on a number of occasions. So yeah, love is the key to moving into more love. So love really is everything. But I think if you were somebody operating, living at the lower level on that chart, which I would call the root chakra level or whatever, I would imagine that love doesn't come into their vocabulary. Whereas in that next layer, the kind of the sacral chakra layer, I would say that that's the love of God, because that's where a lot of people that like to follow rules. So like the love of a system, even, and following rules, and love that comes with that. And a lot of times they love, or they perceive love as being something to do that everybody else is doing. Everybody's showing love to this. So, we're all going to love this now. It's a very outside of them kind of experience, maybe. But as you go up that chart, I mean, there's also, there then comes love of self, which in the solar plexus part can be quite egotistical, in an egotistical way, as opposed to a genuine self-love way, if that makes sense. But then, of course, when you get to the heart chakra, that's, to me, is when you realize that love is a force, I want to say, that love is a powerful energy. And I think that's the level of consciousness that most people realize, that there's more to life than the one that they're living. And that's when they start soul searching and, realizing that it's not money or anything else that brings them happiness and fulfillment. And I think it's at that level of consciousness that people start looking at, well, I'll speak for myself, that I remember looking at a flower. I was living in the campo, in the countryside, so I had flowers everywhere, you know, and roses and everything around me all the time. But I remember just suddenly seeing these roses in front of me and just being kind of spellbound by them and just staring at them and just like, oh my God, they are the most divine creation. And they smell beautiful, they look beautiful, the colors are beautiful, and they were giving off a beautiful energy. And I remember on a walk with my dog one day, I just remember getting totally absorbed in the beauty and love of a rose or a rose bush or something like that. And I think when you can look at things, then it extends into, you know, like looking at mountains, just looking at mountains or looking at the sea and seeing the love in the mountain and seeing and feeling and appreciating and perceiving and experiencing, I want to say all of those words, the love in the sea. And then it just goes on from there, where you then realize that you are part of all of that. And of course, this whole journey goes hand in hand with your self-love journey, because you can see more love outside of you, of course, when you have more love for yourself, because it's a reflection. Yes.
And that sort of but I think we have a tendency to think that love is all the nice things, you know, that it's the roses and the sea and the mountains, and you know, it's all rose tinted glasses, that it's all the nice stuff, whereas in fact love is a vibration that includes everything.
Loving what
everything is. Loving what is, loving war, loving torture, loving, you know, human trafficking, loving it all the darkness as well. And I know that sounds really like crazy. It would have sounded crazy to me. Yes, a perversion, but it isn't, because we can't separate what is love and what isn't love. Love is the creative force. It's a vibration. It's you know, it's an octave. It's on the string between love and hate, or light and dark. There's no where does love end and where does hate begin. We talked about this last time. You know, love is the whole string, you know, and there's just lower octaves and higher octaves of it. But I listened to a video or an audio thing of Ram Dass talking about this. I was just listening to it yesterday. It's so funny, you know, there are no coincidences. Where he was talking about how so it's like when how do we love everything? How do we love it? Because our human self goes, but this is wrong, this is cruel, this is suffering.
This is the opposite of love. A lot of people will be, the things that you've talked about, they'll be saying this is the opposite of love.
But even the opposite of love is still love.
It's still on the
opposite of light.
Still on the string is what you're saying.
It's still on the same string.
Yeah.
The opposite of light is, you know, the opposite of hot is cold, but it's still on the string called heat or temperature. You know, it's all on the same string. So it's just the polar opposite. It's just, you know, it's at one end. than the other, but it's still the same string. So yeah, Ram Dass was saying, so, you know, if our human self goes, oh my God, the suffering, it's too much, and it's awful, and it lowers your vibration down to the suffering. I know I've heard Byron Katie saying, don't suffer other people's suffering. You know, don't suffer other people's suffering.
Because she says, doesn't she? She
raise
says about
their suffering.
Yeah, because she says you cannot actually feel that suffering. What you do is you put your consciousness on it and you imagine. And then through your imagination, we can create any emotion within us through our thinking, through our feelings, through choosing to feel. So what you do is, what people are doing is they're looking at horrible situations and then imagining and visualize that it's happening to themselves, which is where we get that, oh my God, that's awful. But that's because we are living it in our energy and creating that emotion and that feeling from our imagination, which is so incredibly powerful.
Which is bringing our octave down, brings our octave of love, or, you know, it
so
brings
when we
our
see those
energy
events,
down.
so when we see those events,
well, it's so our human is going, oh my God, that's awful. I can't imagine, we often say, but it's like we do imagine, and we put ourselves in there, and we have a whole story going on, and we bring ourselves down that spiral to that level, and we think that's where we're empathizing, and that, you know, and that's a good thing, to imagine somebody else's suffering. But the opposite end of that is, oh well, it's their karma. You know, it's like complete detachment. And well, you know, in the grand scale of things, you know, it's just their soul's journey. And there is no death, there is no suffering. It's all an illusion. It's all for our benefit. But that can kind of dehumanize us if we stay up there at that level. So we need to kind of find that middle ground between, there is no death, there is no suffering, there is nothing to fear, and oh my God, this is awful. That suffering is dreadful. So what can we do to do that? It's just have that, hold the awareness of both, I suppose, without getting too detached and too involved.
I want to say that the answer there, I'm going to say the answer there is love again, because what I'm thinking is, you know, understanding that it's all an illusion, understanding that we create our own suffering, understanding that everyone's living their own karma, understanding that adversity brings growth. You see, this is, I can see these bits, you know, adversity brings growth, whether it be collective or personal. So I often see adversity, I can see the positivity in adversity because it's helping you on your journey. And I often talk about, at a soul level, we've chosen a lot of this for the purpose of growing and evolving. So I can get all of that. But in the situation that you're talking about, when we see things that are really, they might be on the string, but they are, according to our human, totally unacceptable. That's how we feel. We need to detach from it, obviously, because we don't want to lower, because we know, again, from Dr. David Hawkins, that if we keep our frequency high, we can actually counterbalance a lot of people that are vibrating at a lower level. So it is priority to keep our frequency as high as possible. So not taking on that emotion is the most important thing, I think. But you can be at that detached state. But what I want to say is, you want to open your heart, and put it in there. So this is where love, you know, when your heart is just overflowing with love, love for yourself, love for your reality that you're creating, love for your fellow man, love for humanity, love for the collective, you know, and it can just expand, expand, expand. And I know that we've done some meditations together where I've just gone, oh my goodness, how much more can it go? So being detached, I see as a positive thing, as long as it has an open heart of love and compassion, and then you can put those situations in, whether it be, you know, the trafficked kids or the war or what have you, or countries that are suffering or whatever, put it in, because that way, like you're saying, what we're doing then basically is lifting them to our frequency rather than us lowering to their frequency, and that's what we want to do, because obviously, you know, war and all this suffering is unconscious behaviors. This is the result of unconscious behaviors, whether it be you know, karmic and a soul's choice and creating the adversity that they need for whatever reason. And we've all been unconscious, we all, you know, unconscious behavior, you know. So how would we how do we get back to how do we help them? We help them by loving them. And so yeah, there's kind of a connection there.
By loving what is, and yes,
literally
and
loving what is, not loving it like I
is.
like it. This is the difference, isn't it? It's not like, oh, I like war, I like all this suffering that's going on. No, it's not about that. It's about not I love it because it's happening. No, it means put those the souls that are living unconsciously, love them, because that's how we evolve. We evolve through love.
Yeah,
I'm kind of realizing this as I'm saying it, because, you know,
it's good.
Because it's, I think this is really relevant, especially in the world today. This is really relevant.
Totally.
Because it is, our humans, yes, of course, it's very difficult to love what's going on. But I also think it's really important to love what's going on.
To love it unconditionally.
In that way.
In the open-hearted, compassionate way, knowing that it is simply unconscious behavior, that it's just a lower vibration that needs to be lifted, and that we can do that through loving it. Not loving. Okay, so just try and find another way.
It's a different definition of the word love, isn't it? That's why it's.
It is. It's like just seeing it for what it is. For what it is. What is it? It is just a lower vibrating energy. That's all it is. But all energy is source energy. So you can't say that it's outside of God, or that it's not love, because everything is energy. You can't say it's not energy. It is energy. So if all energy is really the creative force, which is love, then even the lower frequencies are love. And seeing them for what they really, really are at their core, even if they're not conscious of it, even if the energy isn't conscious, even if it's asleep, it's still love. It just needs to wake up.
And honoring them where they are on their journey.
And honoring them.
That's difficult.
It's not just people. It's you know, we don't shun tigers for killing the sheep, you know. We say, oh well, it's just their nature,
and we love them,
and we think they're beautiful, exactly, and we see their nature, we see them for where they're at. And we don't really expect anything more from them. No, we don't expect anything to them to be any different. And it's our expectations that people should be, or, you know, things should be, that causes our suffering, instead of saying, well, this is it and this is where it's at. And you know what, I can see why. I can have compassion for it anyway. I can have compassion for it anyway.
Yeah. And I think that does relate to, and there's videos in my Lessons in Awakening where I've said this, I think, where the levels of consciousness actually relate to the child, to children growing up. And what you said about the tiger, I've said this before about newborn babies. And everyone looks at a newborn baby going, oh, isn't it lovely? But actually, you know, the mother really, really needs to sleep. And that newborn baby is going to cry every 2 hours or every however many hours and demand their food and demand their needs are met, however run ragged the mother or father or what have you is. And, you know, if an adult behaved like that, they would be in that lower level of consciousness, you know, having no compassion, having a lack of compassion for others. And I think that's a similar thing, though, isn't it? But we wouldn't judge a newborn baby for lacking compassion towards their mother. And again with the toddler as well, you know, the next stage up, you know, the toddler can only relate to their immediate family. And they like following rules, toddlers, you know, normally, don't they? They like to know what they can and can't do, and they know their siblings and their parents and their grandparents. But
I don't know that they like following rules. I think they just like pushing rules.
Yeah, but they well, no, I think a lot of them do. A lot of them kind of want to know what they can and can't do, kind of thing. I mean, the rules are a very big part of their consciousness, I think, at that age. But they're very wary of anything outside of that nuclear family. And so they also would not, you know, see things, you know, they wouldn't have love or what have you. There's kind of expectations there. They're just sort of beginning, aren't they, to understand love. So yeah, I think there is that as well, that understanding that you wouldn't judge a toddler for not having unconditional love for everybody. You would teach them to actually be wary of strangers, wouldn't you? So and then again, as you go up the chart, there are examples, aren't there, of how it is similar, of unconscious behavior, and how a lot of it is
but it's where you're at, and it's an acceptance of, well, that's just how they are in this moment. It doesn't mean it has to stay like that.
Of course not, because with love, everybody can evolve.
And everybody can evolve.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you wouldn't judge them. Yeah, you wouldn't judge them. So why do we judge adults that behave unconsciously? You know,
when they're unconscious, and they.
Well, and also
I do think because we judge because we think they should know better, or they should make a different choice, because people do choose all sorts of odd things that, you know, if they were more compassionate and more loving towards themselves and others, that they wouldn't choose.
And we judge ourselves when we view ourselves, perceive ourselves to having, you know, being unconscious about things. I mean, we always judge ourselves as well, don't we? It's like there's a constant, it's constantly ongoing, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the thing is to just stop the judgment altogether, and stop looking at what other people are doing, and look inwards and see, well, what, you know, and have compassion for ourselves where we mess up or make an unconscious choice sometimes, and just accept that that's where we were at when we made that choice. And
exactly, yeah, and not to beat ourselves up, and
choose, you know, maybe to hopefully do better next time, or that actually, do better now.
Yeah, because I wanted to say this actually, because there's always different levels, isn't there, to all this stuff. We've talked about war and stuff, and conflict, but you know, if you beat yourself up, I mean, it's just in the words, isn't it? It's the energy of the words. If you beat yourself up about anything, I mean, it could be, you know, because you smoke and you want to give up smoking, or, you know, you want to give up something in your diet, or, you know, you feel like you came across wrong in a social situation, or whatever it is, you know, beating yourself up. Listen to the energy of those words. I mean, that is violence. I mean, on an energy level, that's violence. And this was in one of my, and I will put a link in the description and the video in the screen, because one of the videos I did recently was about the conflict is within you. And I think that's kind of relevant here, because if you are beating yourself up, and if we look at it from the quantum perspective, whereby the collective is quite literally a reflection and a projection of each and every one of us. So if we are beating ourselves up, then that consciousness will be reflected back to us in that holographic projection that we're calling life.
It will, and it does add to the aggression and violence in the collective.
Of course, we are creating it. We have to take responsibility for creating the collective. That's why it's called the collective, because it's all of us. It's the energy from all of us. So if we want to help solve or find a solution to wars and conflict and wrongdoing, then we need to really go within. It's all about going within and finding that within yourself. Because I remember, I mean, I'm okay now, but I remember in the not so distant past, when I used to drink, I remember waking up on many a morning and hating myself. Literally, I would use that word. I'd hate myself for what I'd said or done, or what I couldn't remember saying or doing. And I've never said that on camera before, so that's interesting. But I did. I remember hating myself. So if you know, if you're in that situation, you know, that's even stronger than beating yourself up, I think. Then you have to take responsibility for there being violence and hatred in the collective, because it's the frequency match. The collective is a frequency match to us as a collective, obviously as a whole. So it comes back to self-love. It comes back to self-love and not drinking so much.
Well, when you love yourself, you treat yourself better, you know, and you don't.
Yeah, exactly. I love myself, so I will feed myself nourishing foods and beverages and things like that. That's why I said before, I think a lot of it comes from our diet and how we look after ourselves. If you love yourself, you will look after yourself more. But equally, you know, if you love yourself, you will forgive yourself, and you won't judge yourself. You know, I think there's something to be said for both sides of that.
Well, that, you see, because that's really important, because that's about forgiveness. That's self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others also. And it comes back to this idea that we have to blame somebody, and if we can't blame them out there, we have to blame ourselves. But you know, it's like, okay, where do you draw the line? You know, you have to draw a line at some point and say, okay, I forgive myself up to this point, and from now on I'm going to make different choices. And I'm not saying that that's it for forever. I mean, there'll probably be a kind of a no man's land of making a different choice and slipping back and making it, you know, and trying better and falling back, and you know, but the more you can just forgive yourself for that mistake that you made 2 seconds ago and move on, the more chance you have of actually making changes and making better choices. If you can get out of the story that, oh, well, this is what I've always done and this is how I am.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
just
identifying. Sometimes we identify, I've talked about this before, we identify ourselves through some of our addictions even, and through some of our limitations. And it also, there's a connection here with the programming, the subconscious programming that we're all, you know, that we all have on some level, as to, you know, what we can and what we should be doing and stuff like that. Something that came up recently, I saw it recently, and I really, I think it's all part of the manipulation and control and stuff. But why is it that to celebrate birthdays, we eat sugar and fat and cakes? You know, why don't we celebrate birthdays with fresh fruit? You know, or even, you know, whatever. Why do we celebrate? You know, there is this thing that, you know, to treat ourselves. Often we treat ourselves and then give ourselves some toxins. It's like, you know, here's some toxins of.
For years I've been talking, there's a difference between treating yourself to something and spoiling yourself with something.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So
oh, I see, spoiling as in ruining yourself.
Ruining, or, you know, we talk about spoiling children or spoiling, you know, I'll spoil myself by giving myself this treat. But
it's got to change. I think that's got to change, because like one of the things I've noticed is that when we have in the family, you know, if we have a birthday or something, and then we'll just automatically go out to a restaurant, and then we'll all eat too much, and then we all just feel terrible that we've eaten too much. And it's like, why do we do that to ourselves? All we wanted to do was celebrate a birthday. So I think
I do think it came from, you know, it came from a time when sugar was an absolute luxury, and, you know, it was something very special that you only had once or twice a year, you know, and so it was, you know, something special for your special day to celebrate that. You know, the problem isn't the sugar. The problem is that we have it too much and too often, and we take it for granted. I don't think there's a problem having, you know, a piece of cake on your birthday.
But my question is, why is that our tradition? Why is that our programming? There's a programming there, I think.
I think it has become a program.
We could have a fruit salad.
You could have a fruit salad. Nothing's stopping you from having a fruit
I'll have
salad.
a fruit salad then.
Whatever is your treat. Whatever. Yeah. You know, it's about everything in moderation, as usual. You know.
But I think to treat yourself is to do something to boost yourself. You know, like if I was saying to someone, how would you? Oh, go on.
A little bit of sugar is a boost, you know. So it's the fact that we have it too much and too often is the problem.
Yeah.
It's not the sugar. The sugar is a boost. The sugar is a natural product, you know, from Mother Nature to give us that boost.
Well, I'm not sure that the sugar that's sold in supermarkets is.
No, totally not. Totally not.
I'm sure originally, I remember
originally.
I remember maybe it was in Fiji, I can't remember. I was as a child traveling with my dad, and I remember us finding sugar cane, and I was just given this piece of fresh sugar cane, and it was lovely. I mean, like many things, you know, its origins are natural, but its evolution probably hasn't been.
Well, it's just become corrupted or abused, really, you know. But in and of itself, I can see why sugar became the thing to have for a birthday.
But it's interesting because it's like, I love myself, therefore I'm going to let myself have some sugar. Or I love myself, therefore I'm not going to let myself have sugar. I mean, which one do you want to go with? I mean, it's, if you really love yourself and you love your body and you love everything, you know, that you put into it, and you're going to keep that frequency as high as possible, then loving yourself means not having it, I guess. But this reminds me of when I'm teaching yoga, and I'll often say, you know, if we're doing something that's a bit challenging, You know, I might say, like, we used to do a lot of abs, didn't we, when I was doing the yoga before, and I'd say, go on, love yourself enough to do a few more. Love yourself, do it from love, not force, or you know, you have to do it, you should do it, you know, not that pushing yourself, you know, beyond what is comfortable or natural, but just love yourself, strengthen your body, love yourself to make it more balanced and more flexible. You know, if you can do it, it's like mastery, self-mastery, that's what we're talking about. And it's like the strength card I often refer to in tarot. The strength card is like she's taming the lion through love, and we can heal ourselves through love, or we can help ourselves get fitter through love, not through force or discipline or shoulding ourselves or any of those attracting consciousnesses, but through literally just loving yourself and loving what is. We can actually do all of these things, no? Expand into more of who we are, I want to say.
Yeah, definitely. Love is expansive, you know,
Love is expansive.
It's relaxing, and yeah. And when
love is
relaxed,
expansive. I like that. I'm just going to write that down. I mean, I knew it, but I wanted to write it down.
I know you knew it.
Love is expansive. Yes, that's the key. That's the key. Love expands you. And doing things through love of the self and love for others expands you. This is what we're saying. So when you open your heart and you love the war and all the things that are going on, it expands you.
Not like it, but love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it expands you, which will help raise the consciousness level of humanity. So you're serving them and serving yourself. But then, of course, we know that because everything outside is a reflection of us. So it comes back all the time to loving yourself and expanding into more of who you are and keeping your frequency as high as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Wow. Do you think that's a kind of a natural place to end? Do you think that we've actually... Wow, that's not bad for us, because that's just under an hour. So, but we do have busy days today. So with your satsang, which is really beautiful to attend and to see that evolving.
Yes, yeah, looking forward to a nice group coming today. So yeah.
Okay, I'm very aware that I didn't actually introduce you in the beginning of the video, but I'm kind of assuming that people have watched the previous ones. So if you have stumbled across this video and you haven't seen the previous ones, then I will put Liz's contact details in the description, and you've already met her now. Is there anything you want to say or share before we say goodbye?
I don't think so. I think, yeah, just love all that is. Love yourself. Love, love, love.
Loving what is. Yeah, yeah. And actually, that's just reminded me of another video, which I'll put in the description and in the end screen, which is called What You Resist Persists, Loving What Is. There's a connection there as well. So lots of stuff on love. So thank you so much, Liz, for joining me again for this chat on love. I certainly feel great and better for it, and I will look forward to seeing you in our next video, or actually this afternoon in your satsang. So lots of love to everybody. Take care and bye for now.